Okay, hi. Hi. So, my name is Sherry Cantor. I'm the mayor of West Hartford. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to say that this was never an official way to talk about the budget. In the past, we've had, by state statute, by our charter actually, we have two public hearings. And during those public hearings, as many of you have testified, we receive comment, and we can't engage in a conversation. And it's not an ask and an answer, it's just one way. And there's one by mandate in the afternoon and one at night. A couple years ago, as we have seen very challenging budgets driven by a number of things that you will hear about, there's important decisions to make on how our town invests taxpayer dollars in our community and what all of that means. And so we, last year, got together with our board chair, our leadership, our staff leadership, and said that we need a little more input and interaction with the public. And we are here. We want you to listen to the truth and the real facts, and we want to hear you and you ask questions. And so we set up 3 of these last year, and we are on we have set up 3 as well for this year, and we are on our second. We had an afternoon meeting Monday. Wow, it's been a long week already. Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock at the Senior Center. I just want to thank John Lyons was at that meeting as well. John and Lisa Lazarus from the Town Council is also here. We have our Superintendent of School, Paul Vicinis, who will be doing a presentation, our Town Manager, Rick Ledwith, our Board Chair, Shannon Marimon, Deputy Mayor, Deb Pullen, and then we have Board of Ed member, John, is also here as well. So we have to be careful about public meetings and notice. So some of our colleagues are sitting here and some there, so I apologize. These challenging budgets are just going to give you an overview of West Hartford, and a lot of people compare us to other communities, and they can and they should, but it's never apples to apples. So West Hartford is, we receive 90% of our budget, a little shy of 90%, from property taxes. 10% comes from the state, and about 1% comes from user fees, permits, things like that. So out of that 90% of that is residential property taxes. We have a very small commercial base in West Hartford. Might seem like it's large, but compared to the housing stock that we have, it's kind of one of the reasons we're a town, not a city, as people ask that question. But we are highly residential. And so many other communities around us are not quite like that. Farmington, for example, we're often compared to Farmington, a lot smaller community, but has a lot more corporate presence than West Hartford has. So the impact on our taxpayers is significant. We also are impacted by the state has this heavy reliance on property taxes. It's the only way that we can fund the town. We do have a couple of small streams of revenue now that that the state has introduced after a lot of conversations about the property tax system being pretty onerous and having a large impact on affordability on taxpayers throughout the town, throughout the state. And we have, and whether you agree with it or not, it's a fact. So we have 3% of sales tax for cannabis. We received a little bit of opioid settlement money. We receive, when we put in speed cameras, red light cameras, school bus cameras, those by state statute have allowed municipalities to keep some residential property, some revenue from that. There have been some plans, and I actually was involved in press conferences last year. About 5 years ago, this is kind of an example of how the state and the municipal revenue streams have run. About 5 years ago, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities has identified property taxes as very onerous on the state of Connecticut and on the residents and the businesses in the state of Connecticut. And about 5 years ago, they said we need some additional revenue streams. So they decided to take impose a 1% tax on restaurants and hospitality. And that was imposed 5 years ago. It was supposed to go to the municipality 100%. It was swept and all went to the state. Since that was imposed, the state has $500 million that has been, and now sits in the rainy day fund, and can't be distributed because of the spending cap, and sits in the rainy day fund. We have worked hard. I worked with the Connecticut Restaurant Association, now Connecticut Restaurant and Hospitality Association, and on trying to reclaim some of that revenue stream. As you all know, we have a lot of restaurants in town, and there's a cost to keeping those restaurants. There's a public safety cost, there's a land use cost with parking, there's infrastructure costs, and we have tried to make that happen. The latest version last year was not voted to go back to municipalities. Actually, then it was revised to do half to tourism and half to municipalities. For West Hartford, it would mean about $1 million, half of that, a little bit actually more now, but $1.5 million about. And if we had received the full 1%, it would be $3 million per year. So for West Hartford, we could have received $15 million since the inception, but instead, again, the state collected it. The state has kept it. And we have been fighting again for half. And the latest version of the bill is that will go all to hospitality. So again, frustrating, a really hard situation. So West Hartford is also has some costs that other municipalities don't have. We do all-inclusive, we do trash pickup. We have a paid fire department that also provides paramedic service because we are a very dense community. There's lots of and we receive a lot of calls. And if you're ever on a public safety meeting, you can understand the activity that our public safety department has, and that investment is really important to life and death. And so, we try to balance all of the demands on our wonderful, vibrant, diverse, excellent, awesome community. So many people want to be here. We have been ranked 19th in U.S. News Report nationally. That is unbelievable. And that's the first time last year. And we've been ranked #1 in Connecticut. There are amazing places to live in our state. I just said on our afternoon meeting, I met with 2 CEOs that have relocated from other states to the area recently, and they both have chosen West Hartford to live because of the quality of life. And so those are wonderful, wonderful stories. But we also understand that it's an expensive place to live, and it's always been an expensive place to live. And when I went to high school, we were #1 in per pupil spending in the state of Connecticut, and we were growing rapidly. Now we're 92 out of 169 towns, but we still are, struggling with revenue. And decisions we make today, whether we take a one-time kind of fix for a year budget, or all impact the way our town operates, the way the rating agencies view us, and the way we actually the future years out. We are, and I know that our town manager will address this a little bit, decisions made 50 years ago are impacting our budget today. Pensions that were granted in those years, nobody expected people to be living to 90, 100 years old, and nobody also expected that they would actually, there was a large period of time similar to the state that the town did not fund its pension plan. When there were double-digit returns, money was coming out, no money was going in, and then people retired, and it really put a lot of stress on our pension plan. We are paying for that today, for those decisions, just as the state. We are paying for some of the state decisions for some short-term benefits that really impact us, which is really, really unfortunate. And so we, again, have to balance all of these things. How much do we cut from increases? We're not decreasing our budget, and the budget increases because we compete for talent. Municipal jobs are challenging. They are hard. It's hard to recruit people to do them. We have a declining young population in Connecticut, so recruiting, and we want really good people to work for the town, so we have to pay competitive salaries. So, and we negotiate those, and it's all part of this whole municipal budget package. Our pensions have changed to be more in line with private, but we do have a blend on our books. And so we obviously are a people business and need to recruit wonderful people. So any changes that we do make to the budget does impact employees, and it impacts services, and those are real, and so those decisions are important, and they impact your lives. So. With that, I just want to thank we're all volunteers, except our two town staff here, and we spend a lot of time doing what we think is best for the community. And we do listen. As hard as it is, we might not agree with everything, and we agree with a lot, and maybe can't do what we feel is in line with what you say, but we always are trying our best to do what is in the best for West Hartford tomorrow, but also 20 years down the road. So with that, I think I'm going to our superintendent of schools, yes, or Shannon first.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And then.
Good evening. Shannon Marimone, the board chair for West Hartford Public Schools. And just to echo what Mayor Cantor said, this is a very thoughtful, intentional process. My day job, I actually work for a nonprofit that works with school districts across the entire state of Connecticut. And West Hartford is pretty remarkable with respect to the transparency and the detail that you are able to see the budget. And I encourage, if you really want to dig into it, it's all available online. It's a very thick binder, and it's really spelled out, so clear as day. We know what is going into that budget, and as Mayor Cantor said, it is predominantly a people-driven budget because our education system relies on people and the amazing educator talent that provides support and resources for students and families. It is 58.2% of the proposed budget, so it's a significant driver of the budget, and that is why these community forums are so critical, because we need to hear from you, your questions about it, about this budget, as it also ties into the town budget, and also your suggestions and ideas for what we could be thinking about differently. You'll hear from the superintendent that this is a maintenance budget where there's nothing additive. It's really trying to sustain the excellent quality of education that we've been providing for our students. So we would have to think really hard about anything that would change that at this point, and I think we're looking to the community to hear if there's any feedback on that front. We do have a workshop coming up next Wednesday, the 25th, where there will be both a public hearing dedicated to just the school, the proposed Board of Education budget, followed by a in-depth workshop where there will be additional discussion from the administration explaining the thought that went into the budget that you're seeing proposed. And then the Board of Education votes on a final budget with any proposed changes on March 31st, and then that goes to the town for their review, and then it's kind of a back and forth until it's a final approved town budget holistic with the Board of Education budget. So very excited that so many people are here. There's one more of these on Monday night, and we just want to hear questions, comments, and suggestions from the community. So thank you. And I'll turn it to Superintendent Vicina.
Thanks, Shannon. Good evening, everyone. Paul Vicina, Superintendent of Schools, and very pleased to have you out here, and I'm glad to see a good number for our second such workshop. What we're going to do, Rick and I'm going to walk through and give you kind of a synopsis of the more detailed presentation that I gave to the Board of Ed with the recommended budget. Rick will do the same on the town side, and then we will open the floor for question and answer. And as it kind of has already been said, we appreciate this because when we're doing our meetings, we don't have the opportunity to have the dialogue with the community. So it's really helpful in terms of being able to hear from you, but also respond and then potentially get some follow-up. What I'm gonna outline in very short slides are just kind of the main budget drivers, and then give you a summary of the overall number for West Hartford. But as has already been stated, we're a people business. So the majority of my budget, the majority of the Board of Education budget, 80+% of it is all tied up within salaries and benefits. And so it's really about the teachers that work in our schools directly with our kids. And I just came from Buena Vista. We had the opening of Art Beat. And you know, in terms of a return on investment of the people, I can't speak any more highly than what I just observed with the incredible artwork from kids from kindergarten through high school. As you can see on the slide, you know, our talent is amazing. We boast, in the last 2 years, no fewer than 7 Educators of the Year. Educators of the Year for the Arts, Educator of the Year for World Language, Educator of the Year for Music, the Arts Supervisor of the Year. We have incredible staff. They're all incredibly dedicated and talented. They represent, as I said, 82% of our budget. We do have, under salaries, you know, there's an increase within our salary line. One of the things that people came out kind of in droves last year to my meetings. We put up really lean numbers relative to our classes in close adherence to our class size guidelines. And folks responded. You know, they were concerned about the class sizes being too large and everything. And in the end, we stuck with our class size guidelines, but we received an influx of move-ins to the district. And we received them throughout the summer and certainly into late August. We picked up, I think it was in the neighborhood of 73 or more just at the elementary level, and move-ins across middle and high school. I'm on the phone with people. They are shopping. They are in other states shopping where to go, and our name is out there, and they come to move for the education system. So we do have to make up a deficit, because in keeping with those guidelines, we do hire, and we are seeing our enrollment projections for this coming year to be essentially level. We're going to be level at the elementary school. We have 202 elementary sections currently. We're projecting 202. We moved up to 3 full teams at our bigger middle schools, King Philip and Sedgwick. They had previously been 2.5 teams, but we've had an increase in in those grades, and they'll be slightly increased at the middle school for next year, but we're level staffed at 3 full teams. And then we do have some offsets. We are expecting 75 fewer students total at one of our high schools. At Conard, it's going to be slightly lower next year. That's going to allow us for some savings. Hall is going to have an uptick of a handful of kids, and so we're looking at level staffing there. But overall, when you take those additions that we had to create past the budget and the market settled teacher increase, we have an overall increase to the salary line of about 5.6%. The big kicker on this is the benefits package, which is the insurance. We are part of the state partnership plan for insurance. We've been in the state partnership plan for 9 years, Rick, 8 or 9 years?
2019.
Okay. And overall, the state partnership plan has been a great savings to us. We used to be self-insured, but essentially by school districts and municipalities going into this large pool, we got better rates. We got better rates for a very long time. But insurance everywhere is skyrocketing. So the budget was built on a 12.5% programmed increase by the state partnership plan, a very significant increase. That is actually low for the state partnership plan. They price that out by county. Hartford County is the second lowest increase. So other counties that are in, other towns that are in the state partnership plan in different parts of the state are seeing 15% increases. And then I have colleagues in other districts. Glastonbury, I think, is one. They are self-insured. They're having 20+% increases in their insurance. Insurance costs are just untenable right now, but we've done an analysis to look at it to see if we can do better. In today's market, we can't do better for next year. And the other slice of good news for the schools is that when we look at the ratio of the amount of money that is spent on claims in comparison to the amount of money that costs us for the insurance, we're at a 98% ratio over the last 5 years. All right, so overall, while it is expensive in this coming year, it remains the best insurance plan that we think that we can have, at least on the school side. My board chair did say this is a maintenance budget. I'm not proposing significant adds to staffing, although there are many adds that the community has expressed great interest in. We know that the state of Connecticut as a whole, and certainly the town of West Hartford, is seeking to expand its early education, its pre-K opportunities, both in the public sector and in the private sector. And public sector is preferred because it doesn't cost as much as in the private sector for working parents. That is something that I have been working on. That is something I've been, it's been tasked as a goal for the board. It's not something I put into this budget this year based on the size of our overall increases. Another thing that we've been talking about significantly, I lost it. I had it written, I lost it. It'll come back to me. But essentially, I'm looking to kind of preserve the programming and services that we have right now, not cutting things, not cutting world language or gifted and talented or things that came up last year, and maintain the class sizes where, the other thing was the reduction in class sizes. That came out as a very big ask from the school community last year. They wanted to see smaller class sizes in grades K and 1, and that's something that we were looking at in policy, but it's nothing that we've moved forward in this budget based on that. That was the second thing. Overall, there's a very minor net reduction of 2.6 positions in the global budget. That's not significant. But that's kind of on the heels of a reduction of over 20 positions in the school district in the last 2 years. And that does not count the positions from ESSER. We plussed up in ESSER, and there was another at least 20 positions that we had that we let go of 3 years ago. So we're 20 positions leaner. We're going to be 2.6 positions leaner in the coming year. And that's just to try to maintain the program and the services that we have in the schools. The next significant drivers are our out-of-district tuition and our transportation. Last year, the full story was kind of all around out-of-district tuition. Out-of-district tuition costs have been skyrocketing, and what out-of-district tuition is when there are students, typically students identified for special education services that we cannot program for in the schools. Students who are medically fragile, students who may need a therapeutic placement, that may have schooling in round-the-clock kind of living conditions, things that we don't program for, can't program for as a public school. Typically they can go out to either state authorized private funders, or at times based on the legalities of a PPT and an IEP can end up in a non-state approved facility as well. We still have a responsibility to pay costs for that. We do receive a percentage of reimbursement for the state for excess costs that exceed 4.5 times the per pupil average. So the district is responsible to spend 4.5 times what you would spend for the average child, and then after that the state would reimburse it. Last year, those state reimbursements, because that funding level hadn't gone up in quite a while, those percentages dropped from what used to be at an 80% to a 70%. They were dropping all the way down, and then there was a lot of action and a lot of outcry from, and the West Hartford delegation specifically did a lot of work and a lot of lobbying, and in the end the state came through and they plussed us up at the state level with an additional $40 million, and I think West Hartford got about $1.5 million of that, and that kind of saved very significant costs. This year, we've done a lot of work to bring as many students back to the district as we can. It's been an ongoing effort. We've kind of switched around our supervision to have even more contact with those families, even more on-site visits. And we went from a high last year, we were budgeting at 125 last year, we had a high of over 130 students in out-of-district placement. we're forecast for 117 in the coming year. And believe me when I tell you, 2-3 students makes a significant dollar value difference. All that said, with pulling back that many kids, that's keeping us level funded for the coming year because the costs have continued to move up. The state right now, the legislature is looking at bills to regulate what can be charged from these private providers. So that's something that your state government is working on, that we've given testimony to and things that we've talked about. And so there's a lot of effort with that. There are other efforts that the state has that we've taken advantage of. If you've heard of the SEED grant, Special Education Expansion Grant, Expansion and Development. We've taken advantage of that because we continue to have a growing population within special ed. Despite the fact that West Hartford's student enrollment overall declines, our special education numbers continue to rise because families know that we deliver on the needs of all students, and they seek us out for that. It's not only our legal obligation, it's our moral obligation, but typically we have demonstrated that we continue to attract more complex cases. As folks hear that they have students with very significant needs and we do an exceptional job, they continue to move in. So that becomes a fiscal challenge for us. Transportation, transportation costs are just going up. Can't say it any simpler than that. It's adding about $1 million to the budget in the coming year, and that's based on just running the routes that we have and the increases when you look at year-over-year contract negotiations. So looking at programming needs, there, as been said, this is a maintenance budget. I'm not looking to do much at all with new programming or anything else. I have very minor tweaks. There are some special education adds that I need to make based on student needs increase. So I'll be adding 3.9 positions overall to the special ed department, but those are offsets by reductions in other areas. We do have some reductions in special ed in elementary. We do have reductions in some of our teaching and other positions. So as I already mentioned, there's a net decrease in total of about 2.6 positions. But I would want to share based on things that we've demonstrated we show need for. Mental health and behavioral health always on the rise. Part of this budget, part of this 2.6 net reduction is increasing the number of middle school counselors to add an additional half-time counselor at Bristow Middle School in the coming year. The other thing is I'm looking at how I change the supervision model for our multilingual program, our ESOL program. That population continues to grow, and we need to have a different model so that we can have greater curricular change, greater opportunities for push-in, and basically in an effort to see more significant gains for our English language learners. Our return on investment for our program in general, I think it's up on the slide. Our high schools rest on the foundation of our elementary and our middle schools, which are exceptional. Our high schools land in the top 2 to 3% of all high schools when nationally ranked by U.S. News and World Report, year over year over year. And they don't just magically do that in 9th through 12th grade. That's based on the fact that we have award-winning elementary schools. We had a Blue Ribbon School winner a couple of years ago. We have schools that earn the School of Distinction rating from the Connecticut State Department of Education. We have our middle school kids, they're out competing in literacy quiz competitions, and they're going to world championships and international competition. So we know the quality of the schools is exceptional, and it is essentially the return on investment that we speak of. Our effort is to try to maintain that excellence and not, recognizing we need to have some cuts. What might those cuts be that can preserve the infrastructure that we have and the expectations that essentially the community sets for us? So The adopted budget this year was $214 million. When you add in essentially the costs for the new contracts, essentially salary increases, the increase in the insurance costs, and the increase in transportation and utilities, it amounts to $14 million. We do have a net decrease of 2.6 positions, but overall, I have a very modest add of $62,784 from the big picture changes, which lands us at a 6.6% increase for the district as a whole. All right. So I'm going to turn it to Rick, and he'll go through his piece equally quickly, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Paul. And again, I'm Rick Ledwith. I'm our town manager, and I'll echo the mayor and our board chair's opening comments, and thank you all for joining us this evening at this meeting. This really is your meeting. Paul talked about some of the drivers for his budget. I will do the same on the town side. And then we really want to turn it back to you for questions, answers, and suggestions as well. So that is very much an important part of this process. We have a public hearing tomorrow afternoon, and we have one on Monday of next week, and then the following Monday as well. But that's an opportunity for folks to come in, and you'll speak to us, but the council and the Board of Education will just listen during those sessions. So this is that opportunity for us to get into a back and forth. So some of the budget drivers impacting the town side are very similar to some of the drivers on the board side as well, but I'll expand on a couple of things that Paul had said in his. So we have our salaries and our benefits. So as Paul said, we're a people-based organization. We deliver services to our community. We don't sell anything. It's basically the premise of what we do. We have 22 bargaining units between the town and the school. So we will negotiate salary, benefits, and working conditions with those 22 bargaining units. So for our salaries on the town side this year, that equaled a 2.8% increase in our salaries this year. The healthcare, as Paul had mentioned, both the schools and the town participate in the state partnership plan. We've been in that plan since 2019. And at the time, and I'll talk a little bit about this with our pension plan as well, since we are a people-based business, we will also look at ways for us to do things differently from a benefit perspective. And if there are things we can do creatively on the benefit side to save money, we will do that. In 2019, we took advantage of moving to the state partnership plan. It's a plan that allows municipalities around the state of Connecticut to join the state healthcare plan. When we did that, we saved $3 million that year, making that change to the Connecticut State Partnership Plan. There are about half the cities and towns now that participate in the partnership plan today. And during those first couple of years that we were in the state partnership plan, we benefited tremendously. We had a 0% increase the following year and a 1.4% decrease in that third year. The last couple of years, last year we had a 9.4% increase. This year, as Paul said, we have an 11.5% increase. So that certainly is not anything that we're happy with. But as Paul said, again, it's a benefit that we have to negotiate with our employees. So we're watching and monitoring that plan very closely. And if we think this is something we're going to be looking at these types of increases as we move forward, we certainly will talk about an exit strategy from a leadership standpoint, and then we'd have to talk with all of our bargaining units about that as well. So we'll always ultimately do what's best for our community when it comes to these types of plans, and minimizing that impact that it has on our taxpayers. So again, this year, healthcare plan a little bit higher. As Paul said, and anyone who's in a private health plan in the audience knows that you're probably seeing a similar type of increase with your healthcare plan. National trend right now, healthcare trend on a national basis is 9% creeping up to 10%. So had an impact on the entire country. Certainly, we're feeling it here. Not happy about it, but as I said, we'll continue to monitor that plan and the performance as we move forward. So I won't repeat what the mayor said, but I think it's important. You know, as we deliver a tremendous service to our community. We are a high service community. We're different, as the mayor said, than some of our neighboring communities, and I think our community expects that high level of service. But certainly, we always have to do our best to manage that high level of service with a reasonable impact on our residents. And we understand that, and we do our best to balance that. But we're proud of our accolades. I mean, as the mayor said, U.S. News World Report, number 19 in the 19th best place to live in the country, best place to live in Connecticut. Niche.com, best place to live in Connecticut for the 8th straight year. AARP just announced, just within the last several weeks, that West Hartford is the most livable community in the state of Connecticut. So we don't take those lightly. We very much appreciate those accolades. But it's about that partnership that we have with our community, delivering exceptional services year after year, but also doing our best to minimize the impact that our taxes have on our residents as well. And that's what we're working through. A very challenging year this year, but we have several weeks between now and budget adoption to work with our community, answer questions, as I said tonight, and talk about solutions as well. So a little bit about our operating expenses. So our operating expenses went up 4.8% this year, $1.5 million increase in our operating expenses. $1 million of that $1.5 million increase is attributable to our solid waste contract. So as folks may know, we were with Paynes. Paynes had been the manager of the contractor for our solid waste program for many, many years. We had an outstanding contract. We haven't seen any kind of increases over the last couple of years in our budget as it relates to our solid waste contract. Paynes sold their business to All America Waste around this time last year, and All America Waste honored the contract that we had with Paynes, but that contract is up on October 1st. So, and we're being told to expect anywhere between a 25 and a 30% increase in our cost to remove our waste from town. So, so that's about a $1 million increase of that $1.5 million increase in our operating expenses. So, our Director of Public Works, John Phillips, phenomenal director, incredible vision, always looking at these things and ways to minimize our costs and the impact that has on our community. We've looked at things, we've done things like removing food waste from our regular waste to minimize our costs. He is now going out to bid. So as we move through the next several weeks, that process is undergoing. If there's a better deal for us to take advantage of out there, we will certainly do that. At the very least, we will use this process to negotiate a better contract with All America Waste. So we will work to get that $1 million increase between now and April 20th. Capital financing is a portion of the contract. That increased about capital is up $2.7 million this year. We have a $570 million capital improvement program, so it's a 12-year plan to address our infrastructure. We have 217 miles of roads, 300 miles of sidewalks, 170 acres of parks. We have 2.5 million square feet of buildings. That $570 million is our commitment to maintaining that exceptional infrastructure as we move forward. So every year we issue $15 million in general obligation bonds. We're a AAA rated community. We've been a AAA rated community for as long as I can remember, probably as long as I've been alive, and that's a long time, believe me. And we utilize that AAA rated status to get the lowest true interest cost for us and for our residents when we issue those general obligation bonds. So this year, we are paying $19 million for past general obligation bond issuances. So it's not anything that's in our program this year that we can cut to lower that amount. That's a result of us issuing those bonds in the past, and now we make those bond payments every single year. And then talked about our AAA rated status. I want to talk a little bit about grand list growth. This year we had a very good year, $81.5 million in grand list growth, resulted in about $3.6 million in additional tax revenue to the town. Half of that, almost half of that, is a result of motor vehicle growth. So you've been seeing a lot of developments that have been approved around the town. Developments that will increase our grand list growth as we move through the next couple of years. Last year, I was in this room and talking with, I recognize a couple people from last year's meeting. Last year, we were at 60 million, and I expected that number to move up a little bit this year. It did. It moved up to 80. Next year, if we're hopefully be back in this room again having this type of meeting, that number will be quite larger than 80 million based on the growth of development that we've approved that are in some form of being built. So till they're completely done and those apartment units are leased out, that's when we see the largest benefit from that type of growth that's happening in the town. So we'll see that number grow pretty substantially next year and the year after as a result of the Yukon property on Asylum Avenue, Trout Brook, you have 950 Trout Brook, 1 West Hartford, which is a new multifamily unit at the Children's Science Museum, former Children's Science Museum location. We have a project here right on New Park Avenue. The Jade Inn that was approved, that will be in some form of development over the next year or two. It already is. We have development occurring in the center. We have a new condominium complex and a new apartment building that's in the process of being built as we speak. And we have a couple of other developments and propositions that are in the pipeline as well. Because of the accolades that we've talked about in our school system and West Hartford being a destination, there's a tremendous amount of interest in people wanting to invest in our community, which is a really good thing, and it will help us in the future. We are fully leased out with our office space. Folks heard EY is moving from Hartford into West Hartford onto Farmington Avenue in the center. We've had conversations with a couple of other larger international type of firms that want to relocate to West Hartford as well. We need to find them office space in order for them to do that, but that's a reflection of who we are and what we represent and being that destination community. And we need to continue to work together, and we will work with our colleagues on the board side and our council certainly to minimize the impact that this budget is having on our community to get us to where we are going to see that growth really benefit our community in the years ahead. The mayor mentioned our pension plan. I want to reinforce this as well. Again, I talked about the state partnership plan and saving the $3 million when we made that move. We had a very underperforming pension plan for many years. Back in 2021, our annual budget allocation to our pension plan was $26 million. This year, our annual allocation to our pension plan is $10.5 million. So we reduced that by $15 million by using our AAA rated status back in 21, issuing pension obligation bonds, and essentially lowering our actuarial determined employer contribution by $15 million and allowing us to set up a pension obligation reserve fund to minimize any swings that we would see in that annual year-over-year either increase or decrease in our pension plan. So So with that pension obligation bond, obviously, we need to pay the debt on those bonds. But since we've issued our pension obligation bonds in '21, we have saved our taxpayers between lowering our ADAC from 26 to 10.5 and making that debt payment to our pension obligation bonds. We've saved $18 million in 5 years to our taxpayers, net savings of $18 million to our taxpayers by making that move as we did. So certainly incredible vision on behalf of our mayor and our town council back then, but those are the types of things that we will continue to do as we move forward to, again, as I said, minimize the impact that a budget will have on our taxpayers. So again, 6.6 increase overall. We're working to get that number down, 4.8% on the town. A little bit less than 7% on our Board of Education, 16.4% on the capital side. That's that $2.4 million. Mill rate right now is increasing by 2.91 or up to 47.69. Our motor vehicle mill rate as of right now is, well, and will be 32.46, and that will remain unchanged. So again, our goal over the next, tonight, meetings that we have next week, and then working with our Board of Education and our council working together to lower that impact as we move to budget adoption later in April. So that summarizes a quick summary of both budgets, and I think at this point, barring any comments that the mayor may want to make, we'd like to turn it over to our guests. Okay. So we have a microphone here, and this is just to be picked up by the microphone for the camera, so it's not, if you don't hear yourself, it's not because it's not in the speaker system. Do we have to hit the button, David?
Digital world.
Okay.
Red is on.
Okay. Questions? Comments?
Can you hear me? I'm just curious about the three developments, Byline, Camelot, and One West Hartford. What is the annual property tax from those three developments?
So, great question. The question for our viewing audience at home is the tax impact of the three developments in the center. We have the Camelot, which is 900 Farmington Avenue, which was a former West Hartford Inn. And we have One West Hartford, which is located at 950 Trout Brook. And then we have the Byline, which is heading a little bit further on Farmington Avenue. So I have some rough numbers for that. So the annual taxes received for the Camelot, as folks may recall, and we do have, as everyone knows, we have a housing crisis, not only throughout the country, but certainly right here within the state and here in West Hartford. And we worked with the developer a couple of years ago to build a development that was fully 100% affordable. So it's not 20% affordable. It's not market rate affordable. It is 100% affordable. So, and we have an arrangement with the West Hartford Housing Authority that minimizes the tax impact on those types of developments that offer that kind of affordable housing. So we receive roughly about $50,000 in taxes from that particular development, but that increases every single year. At 950 Trout Brook, that's in the process of moving. They're finalizing their construction right now. So we hope to be issuing a temporary certificate of occupancy within the coming weeks, and they will start to lease out units in that development over the next couple of months, and they'll probably do the first floor, and then we'll move to second and third. But we can expect roughly 30 million roughly in taxes from that development annually. And then the byline, I'd have to, the byline would be significant, probably half of that at least, 15, 20 million for the byline. But I'd have to get those exact numbers and get back to you on that.
So,
Oh, no, not taxes. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's grand list growth.
Okay.
Yes. So taxes, so we're probably looking at about $1 million in taxes for 950 and maybe 500,000 for the byline. But I'd have to
yeah, I'm
look
not
up
going to
those
hold you,
numbers.
you know,
Yeah,
hold you the
don't hold me
exact
to those.
numbers.
Yeah, you're right. I was doing grand list growth.
Just because I think everyone has an opinion on development, but I think it might be easier to sell to taxpayers if they can say, this building that went up, which I drive by and frustrates me, oh, that can help offset other property tax increases down the road. So I think
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
Good
a
to
great
know
point.
the dollar
Yeah.
values there.
And also the building permit is obviously in motor vehicle.
Motor vehicle taxes included would obviously add to that as you have more folks moving into town. And then the mayor had mentioned, in addition, like one of the other revenue streams that we have is building permit fees that are associated with this development, with these developments, and those are significant. We receive about $3 million. This year we received about $3 million in building permit fees as a result of these developments. Next year we're projecting roughly the same.
And my other question is for the other affordable housing developments, would those also have the same sort of property tax decrease incentives to get those built than the other market rate?
So all of the other developments, so we have one other affordable housing development on North Main Street, the L, which is at 1244 North Main. That would have a similar type of arrangement as we have for the Camelot. But the other developments that are in town, like the Byline, One West Hartford, Yukon, Jayden, and some of the others, the ones in the center, have affordable housing included in those developments, but at a much lower rate than the ones I spoke about. So those have
Somewhere in the middle.
somewhere about 10 or 20% of affordability, but they have no associated tax break with that affordability.
Thank you.
So I was just wondering, how much will the property tax go up? What is the increase in this budget?
So the average taxpayer proposed, this is proposed
Okay,
right now, would be
proposed.
6.5%.
So with these developments that you were just speaking of and explaining about, could we hope that maybe our increases would not be as much every year?
Correct. Yep.
That would be beautiful.
So
Because we want to
next-
stay in West Hartford, and we're starting to fear
Yeah.
that we're going to be priced out. But with all this building, yeah, you're right. It's more sellable if we know. Okay, so 6.5 doesn't mean it's going to just keep.
No, so next year
Okay.
we will, like I said, we'll see that number grow. Our grand list growth will
Okay.
grow next year. Next year, we have, we're going through reevaluation. So next year we'll have we'll break it down into two different types of grand lists, essentially. So we'll have, as we all know, and our number one prized asset is our home, and we want everyone to be able to stay here. We don't
Thank
want to
you.
price people out of being able to live here and afford to live here. So at the same time, we're seeing tremendous increases in the value of our homes. So last year when we were in this room, and we base it off of each revaluation cycle. So in 2022 was our last reval. The average value, home value, has increased. Last year was 35%. Now we're up to 45% since 2022. So, and I think that's a factor of what we're seeing on a national basis and on a state basis. But you are starting to see that slow down around the state and around the country. It's not slowing down here. It continues to increase. So our mill rate will decrease significantly next year because of that reval and that increase over here on that 45%. So what we will do and work with our council to do on our Board of Education is balancing that other grand list growth as a result of this development to make sure that, yeah, the mill rate's going down a lot, but my value is up a lot, so I'm still paying the same or more. We'll make sure we balance that grand list growth on a development with the revaluation process. It'll be complicated, but that's what we will do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just quickly to add, I mean, it takes a long time for a property to come online and be of value and really and create that tax revenue. And this has been a plan for a very long time to take underutilized properties and make them more valuable to the town. And so there is significant impacts that we will feel. When we're talking about raises of 14 million and, on the town side, with the total dollar amount is 6 million on the town side and then 2 million, that's a lot of development, a lot. So this helps, but it doesn't change the trajectory. And that's why we talk about other revenue streams is a really important component to affordability.
Yes, my name is George Kennedy. I've lived in this town since 1951. So I've seen a few administrations. I graduated from the schools. The problem, as I see it with the budget, isn't one individual thing. You're trying to be everything for everybody. And the result of this, yes, you got great numbers, but you're driving seniors out. I saw an article in one of the papers recently here. It said, what can we do to be more senior friendly? Simple, reduce the taxes. Because most of us have a fixed budget. I mean, I have a good budget, but the reality is it's not going to get any bigger because I'm not working any longer. I'm sitting on my ass at home. I'd like to be able to work. The point I'm trying to make is, having been a management consultant for years, what you really need here, and you fought it, maybe because it threatens your power, maybe you just don't want it, I don't know. But you need a finance committee. A lot of towns have this. A lot of towns also take and set at 65 or 75 tax freeze for seniors. We're not using the town's services, and we're paying the lion's share proportionately. I mean, the only thing I do is I go to the senior center, and I go through a strength and fitness, which I have to pay for. It used to be you had to pay to be in the senior center. Well, the point being that young people coming into the town, you mentioned about...
Just put the mic so people can hear.
You mentioned about being a destination for people with kids. We've become a mecca for this. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. Young man here has a neighbor who just moved from Farmington. But yet my house on the other side, Farmington line, is paying half the taxes. And yes, I know they've got the corporate things. But what you need to do is a systematic audit of your system. Not just come and tell us how great everything is. Because, like we talked about the budget finance guy, he lived in Simsbury. He didn't even know what we were paying when we questioned him. I used to be in the taxpayers, as she well knows. And I was probably the only non-Republican who was ever head of the taxpayers. I mean, we can blame this on Trump, but I mean, that's only going to go so far. We need to get the taxes in this town down. And leadership is making hard decisions. All these programs. You got an empire in the Board of Education, all these staff members. You don't need them. I could go through there with a team of consultants and cut probably 10% of them without even blinking an eyelash. And you know this in your heart and soul. It's nice to have it, but the reality is, can we afford it? And that's what has to be. You want to be a real destination? Well, then get our budget down. This is not sustainable. And many states have layered their taxes to respect the seniors. I mean, I was in the military. I came here. I was a scout leader. I've done everything you're supposed to do in a community. And yet, my taxes now are $23,000 a year. That's ridiculous. So that says, yes, I live in a nice house, but I inherited it. I couldn't afford the house now. This whole thing is ridiculous. And frankly, I have to wag my finger and say, you folks really, really ought to put a finance committee together. An independent finance committee. You've got executives living in this town who do nothing but finance. If a corporation was run like this, they'd go broke. You're doing the best you can, I know that, but you're trying to please everybody, and you can't. So, give it to someone else.
Thank you for your comments.
Are you-
And that's what this is about, right? We're listening. The result, as you know, and everything we do is tied to a service. And it is, I mean, and I know you, Mr. Kennedy. I remember you. I've been working for the town for 25 years, and I remember your role as well. So, but yeah, I know you know all of this as well.
I'm in finance and did management consulting, so I have a fair feel for it. I can't quote specifics like you were.
Yeah. And and the mayor got into our property tax system in the state of Connecticut is broken, and it needs to be fixed. We deliver this exceptional level of services.
I'm not going to live that long.
True. Well, no, I don't mean it like that. I'm not either. I'm not confident. I'm not confident that we're going to see that a change that we really do need to see. We need other revenue sources like other states have, a sales tax that the mayor talked about, so that we can continue to deliver these types of service. And because of the way our model works here in Connecticut, it's a shared expense among all of our residents. When I had my three kids were going through our schools, our per pupil expense is $22,000 per student. So if my kids were still in school today, I have three, that would be $66,000 worth of services that I'm receiving by living here and having my kids go to school. But I'm only paying $12,000 in property taxes. So as any young families in the crowd, they're experiencing that level of service that is more so today. They're paying less than what they're receiving. But as you get older, and your kids move out of school, I'm continuing to still pay that property tax, but it's going towards a younger family who's with more kids. But again, it's our residents expect a very high level of service, and we continue to deliver that. We have to find that balance, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I say everything sounds good except for one thing, the bottom line over here, and that's not just this year. That was last year too, and we've been paying taxes every year. We get a decent tax increase, and it's always over inflation. So you think that over all the years we'd be in good shape, and went out of nowhere a 6.5% increase last year and this year. And I know they're promising better things for the future, but it's hard to believe because it hasn't happened. Every year we get it, and next year we're looking at a revaluation. The last time there was a reevaluation, the mill rate didn't go down that much. And I've been living in town here for 45 years, and our taxes have gone up, and we've gotten less service. The only thing we really get in this town, if you don't have your kids in school, is garbage collection. And most towns have that. Except, and it's a big expense, is our fire department. And we saved the fire department by making them first responders. Big mistake, because the fact of the matter is that they're unionized, and they work all kinds of overtime and things like that. We've been better off if we separate it up. It's too late now. But I have to say, I mean, even the responses, do they need to bring a fire engine every time they go to a response? Do we need like 50 people? I'm surprised. So I've been to responses one time. I'm surprised you weren't there. It seemed like there were 15 people. Half the town was there. I'm going, do we really? Is this the type of response? If something happens to me, I want them to come, but I don't need like 50 people there. And what do they tell? And I guarantee you, they'll say, look at all the responses we've gone to. We probably need more firemen or first responders, and the bottom line is, yeah, I hate to say it, but you have to make cuts. You want to compare it to other towns. There's Greenwich, right? Another beautiful town. They went through this thing where they're raising tax. They cut things. We never seem to cut. And I don't want to cut. I don't want to be, but if you have to, you have to. 6.5%, means you need to cut. Because again, it isn't though we were raising taxes in all these years. And it's not just for seniors, it's what about our younger people too? I mean, we talk about affordability, and this is what we get. I mean, we didn't get the memo, I guess, on that, because if 6.5% is affordability.
There's one more tax that people never talk about.
Oh.
There's one more tax. We used to have leaf pickup. Hartford still does. Farmington still does. You cut it out. I now pay $350 to pick up my leaves. Now, should I cut down all the trees? I mean, seriously, folks. You're cutting services in certain areas, but you're not touching them in others. You can't be everything for everybody. It doesn't work, and it's not sustainable. And if you drive the seniors out, hey, you've lost free money. Think about it.
But it's not just seniors, George. It's young people too. I mean, really. I mean, it's all. Just can't. Throw it on them either. But
They want services, let them pay for it.
well, there are certain things, and it's like Mr. Faxon, again, the central office. He already mentioned it. This comes under a lot of attack. You start hearing things about the central office, not just from other people, from teachers themselves. This is something that has to be dealt with. When New Haven asked Lamont for more money, he said, I'll give it to you, but you got to do something about that central office, because he's hearing about it. And it's all through education, even at UConn. All these administrators and things like that. You have to really wonder, do we really need these many? I don't know, to tell you the truth. What do I know about that? But I've been hearing things that people coming into the central office and they get their own secretary. Is that true? That no, that's not true. Okay. That's what somebody told me one time. And there also somebody told me that we only have 200 students at the middle school, I'm trying to think of the name of the middle school. Bristol Middle School, and possibly we should close it and save money that way too.
Listen, we look at everything. So I think, West Hartford. Hartford's a big city. Hartford has a lot of state aid. They have a lot of infrastructure. And I think sometimes, we have a central office, and in our central office we have hardworking and dedicated people. It's not going to, and I'm not saying that we've made cuts there. We have a position here, from central office that we cut just this last year in this budget. That's not 10 positions that's cut, but that's, but I understand your point. The Bristow Middle School was built when the size of our middle school population exceeded essentially the capacity of the buildings at King Philip and at Sedgwick. And Sedgwick is probably the building that's tougher capacity-wise in terms of classroom space and availability. King Philip's a big school, but it's not small, it's not undercrowded. When we were building this budget, as we do every year, we look at school utilization. We looked at Bristow, we looked at some of our elementaries, and we said, what would it look like if we pushed everybody out? Well, our middle schools couldn't absorb the 300. It's basically a team of about 105 at each grade level, and we take about half from each of the two other middle schools through a lottery. It would be extremely challenging to absorb those into Sedgwick and to King Philip, and they're growing in this coming year. So, I never say never. There's always things that you can do. You can build portables, you can do different things, but you have to remember that when we talk about closing a school, and we've talked about some of our smaller elementaries, the cost savings isn't as dramatic as people want to think that it is. You still need, by and large, the teachers to teach. Those kids are all going somewhere. And it's not like I can put one here and one there. I have to send them to the neighborhoods, which means I have to increase the number of classes so the teachers travel with them. So at the end of the day, you might save a principal salary and what it costs to put the lights on or something like that. But it's not the millions of dollars. And so it is one of the things that you balance and say, hey, as you look at enrollment projections down the road, is that going to be your smartest move? Or is it a short-term move that you're going to regret later? But we do look at those things.
And there's other things too. It's like the overtime. We've talked about the overtime. Now I realize it's contracts, but when somebody makes $125,000 in overtime, I think that should raise eyebrows. But it doesn't seem to for some reason. And that's just one guy. Never mind all the other overtime. And it goes into public works and things like that, too. And I realize that the union, I don't understand how they even get these things called minimum staffing and things like that. We shouldn't even have, we should be able to make the staffing. Somebody told me that they keep 5 people down at the Rockledge golf course all winter. For what? Is that true?
Yeah, there's a superintendent for the grounds, and there are a couple of ground maintainers.
All
I don't
winter,
know the
though?
exact
I mean,
number.
the thing is, in the wintertime, I don't, and I take walks down there. You know, the thing is, bottom line, that's probably just still a drop in the buck, but it all adds up. Everything adds up. And all I'm saying is this is not acceptable. Not 2 years in a row. And you're promising better down the road, but we've heard that, and we're not getting it. In fact, it got worse. It got worse. So, really disappointing, to tell you the truth, you know.
Thank you. Just on the other end of the spectrum, you know, I'm 30. I moved down 2 years ago, bought a house, and property taxes have gone up $4,000 since 2023. And I echo the similar sentiment of is this sustainable? Obviously, no one has a crystal ball. I don't see inflation or healthcare costs or any of the cost drivers in a town budget getting any better. So should we kind of as a town get used to 6% per year? Again, I'm not trying to be unrealistic. Costs for everything have gone up, but just I wonder how long the level of increases can continue, and I'm curious, if you had to maintain a 0% increase last year to this year. Not saying this is required, but let's just say if you don't make a 0% increase, the sun's going to explode. What would be the items that are even feasible to cut, or the majority of these pre-negotiated contracts that the benefits and the salary increases are out of the town of West Hartford's control? We're just kind of going along with these contracts that have been negotiated.
As I can't remember who said it, but the Board of Education represents about 60% of the town's budget. I think 58 this year. Just to give that context, that's not unique or specific to West Hartford. That's pretty much how it is across every town in Connecticut, generally speaking. The contracts are, by and large, 99% of my employees are contract unionized employees, and those contracts are set. So, those are some of the things. Those are when I tell you they're market settled, fair contracts. It's the going rate. For instance, was this last contract expensive? Teachers make up the majority, but not all. They got a good settlement, but they got the average settlement. They didn't get necessarily this above average settlement or super high, and that's in the midst of a teacher shortage in the state of Connecticut. We have a lot of steps in our teacher contracts. We see a lot of, which is a slow progression until they get to the highest step. We see a lot of teachers who will move out from West Hartford mid-career to go to other places because they have shorter steps. They can take their experience and they can jump and get a $10,000, $15,000 increase in a neighboring district. So it's something that is an issue for us because we are not known to be the highest paying. So we have decent salaries for our teachers at the top step, and their year-over-year increases are less. They're not the same figure that you get. I think it was two and change, somewhere between 2 and 3%. I forgot the second half of your question, but 0%. Thank you. What does 0% means on the education side? You look at when you take salary and benefits of the average teacher, you're talking about 10 teachers for $1 million. So if I needed to reduce, somewhere in the neighborhood, I think it was 70%ish of my increase is salary and benefits for all the employees. Rick talked about the number of different unions. I've got 1,700 employees. That's everything from a cafeteria worker to a school security officer to a teacher to an administrator to a teaching assistant. You'd be talking, hundreds. To make a 0%, you'd be talking hundreds of teachers. Programs that would you have to cut. It's world language programs. It's athletics. And when we have made the cuts, I made mention that we're 20 positions thinner in the last 2 years, and we do start those cuts as far away from the classroom as possible because. I may not be smart, but I'm not stupid. I know that when we make cuts like this and it impacts a child, that's going to be the constituents I hear from immediately because I know that's a big reason why we get a lot of movement into the district. People aren't coming here to pay the taxes. They're coming here for the education. They're coming here for the services. They're coming here for the reputation of the town, which is outstanding. So it's a balancing act of how do you maintain the affordability and the livability and at the same time preserve the things that people come here to. When I say expect, I often, it's expect and demand. So your concerns are all very legitimate, and they do represent the challenge.
It sounds like to me if you're not going to be able to bring down the growth in the budget, to grow the pie, to have more entities, let's call them, paying taxes. But to echo the sentiment is that 1, 5, 10 years down the road of development, hard to say. So I think that would be my preference is to have more residents and more businesses paying taxes to kind of share the burden. Obviously, everyone has a very strong opinion on, back in the day, it used to be a farm over here. Like, well, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So appreciate the answer.
Thank you. I beg your pardon? Oh, yes, we'll do. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for Superintendent Vicinis. So I understand I'm kind of a budget nerd. I think I've been following this budget for years and years, and up through 2019, he really seemed to be managed incredibly well. And maybe managed is not the right word because I think COVID, there were a lot of external factors I know we're still coming off that at some point. The concerns I have, I'll talk about maybe on the Board of Ed side is. When I look at comparing surrounding towns, just simply the rate of increase, I look at 2 or 3 metrics that scare me. Number one, the rate of increase for the surrounding towns is lower, and I understand that some towns are paying a little more in insurance, so on a line item, or a little less in insurance. But when we look at the overall budget, the rate of increase is highest in West Hartford by a fairly significant margin. That's number one. Number two, when we look at teacher to student ratio, the ratio is the lowest in West Hartford. And then when I look at meaning less teachers per student, it's under 50%. I think we're the only town in the area where it's under, I think we're 47 or 48%. And then finally, the third thing is it seems like there's a preponderance of TAs, and it's tough because different budgets show it differently, so it's a little hard to understand. And I should have probably said out of the gate, I am a town councilor. I'm one of the town councilors, and to me, changing class size or doing anything that would impact the kids is a complete non-starter for me. So I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to head down that rabbit hole. I am not. I'm just trying to understand some of the budget drivers behind it. So, and I'm going to hand the mic off to Mr. Kennedy.
Because this is the second time I've heard this 47%. I want to have a better understanding of that. But, historically, as I present to the Board of Ed, when we look at our per pupil expenditure is it's an easy concept. It's intended to help describe Board of Education budgets across multiple towns that have different different size of population, different things. So you just basically take your entirety of your budget and you divide by your number of kids. That's your per pupil expenditure. Historically, West Hartford over the last 10, 15 years or more has been in the lowest third for the state. As the mayor mentioned, we're at 92nd this year. We were above average last year in terms of the increase. We knew that. We talked about that. It was our out of district tuition. I don't know which districts you're comparing to. I have a list, so I'm aware there are quite a number of districts surrounding us that, or at least they're in our DIRG, because those are generally the ones I look at, our demographic reference group. And we're going to be above, with what I'm proposing, we would be slightly above the DIRG average, but we are not out of the ballpark. We are not an outlier in the same way that we were last year. I'm aware of districts that are pitching 12%, 13% increases, and a lot of that is being driven by their insurance costs. The 47% teacher to student, I'm just going to be honest, I don't understand that, because that means a 2-to-1 ratio of, I assume, students to teacher. And that there's just no reality in that at all. In our online, in our materials, we have identified on the special education pages, you can look at, it breaks out right in a graph, the teacher to student ratio for special education student population, and it's not a challenge to, we also have the total number of
I misspoke, I apologize. 47% teacher, 53% non-teacher employees. My apologies. I meant the
Okay.
employee big, I apologize.
All right, so I would, okay, interesting. So I haven't looked at it through that lens. I would need to look at it. But I think at the basis of your question, you asked about kind of para-ed, and thank you for explaining it, because it's the second time I've heard it, and I've not understood what people were talking about when they said it.
To paraphrase you, I'm dumb, but not that dumb.
Yeah. Because that counts everybody. That counts our, and I don't know if other districts are reporting it the same, so that's an interesting question. Our paraeducators, because you asked about that specifically, it's paraeducators, teaching assistants, registered behavioral technicians, a whole group of folks that are in a similar union, that are in that union. And that's something, it's a group that has increased over time, and a lot of that increase, the majority of that increase really is tied to students that are required a one-on-one in their IEP, and it's a reflection of the growth in that population. And as I've said, we not only have grown in the number of students serviced through an individualized education plan, but we've grown with the complexity of need, and so we do get a high number of move-ins, and oftentimes that support is written into the IEP that they carry with them when they walk in the door. We do a lot of work to reevaluate that and to see what we can do to help provide those services, and just talk about what the setting looks like when students are here. But it is a legal document that we have to follow. When the other, just to put them in context, we have a handful of teaching assistants or paraeducators that work in an office alongside of a secretary. So like at an elementary school, you'll generally have one secretary and one paraeducator to help run the school. And then the only others, we have instructional paras. We typically staff on a 2-to-1 ratio for the number of kindergarten sections that we have. For every 2 kindergarten sections, we generally have 1 instructional para, so they can go in and work with the teacher and do centers and help provide recess duty coverage and things of that nature. So it's not an exorbitant amount when you add them all up. So the real big ones that we see come really for the specialized needs for students, individual programs. And as many as we have, we are short. We run short on what is technically required through the IEPs. Sometimes we've had to rely on they have services, TA services and placement services that you can essentially rent help from at times, but that costs more than when we can hire them ourselves. So we have seen an ebb and a flow, an increase and a decrease over years. I don't have the specifics in my head, but I can get them because they're all in our budget book.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
I have 2 questions, and then Mayor, I'll shut up. One for you, one for you. When you go by a construction site in the road, you have a cop there, which is a good thing, okay? Now, my understanding was that the construction company pays not an actuarial guaranteed, but they pay an amount that goes into their pension plus the salary. They pay toward this. Frankly, that's private work. It should have nothing to do with their pension. And that's what Gary mentioned, $150,000 for a cop. I mean, if I had to do it over again, I'd be a cop. So what I think should be done, an immediate savings to cut pensions with the police officers. And I realize they got tight contracts. Anything that they earn on private work like that, like if they worked at the mall as a private cop, you wouldn't put it in their pension. Why put the construction in? Makes no sense at all.
Great question, and I have a good response to that. And we have made those changes to our contracts over the last several years. So with all of our contracts, we talked a little bit about overtime earlier. We have public works employees and police officers and firefighters who all earn overtime if someone's not going to be there. Well, public works, we know what they do all winter. But for police and fire, when someone's not there, we require someone to cover that shift for them. That would be overtime. Well over half of our police officers and firefighters are now covered under a pension plan that no longer incorporates overtime into their pension. So they've received a significantly reduced pension in comparison to what we have 3 tiers now. Tier 1 is our older police officer and older firefighters, and we have less than 20 police officers and probably less than 10 firefighters who are still covered in that tier.
Now that's leadership.
Thank you.
Now you're on the hook for a second. You used to have a program. I've been out of the thing, as you know, for about 4 years. You used to have a program where you had a smorgasbord of languages like Spanish and French. And they had teachers that would go around to the thing and give them an hour or 2 a week. Do you still have that?
You're talking about world language at the elementary level?
I don't know what it was called. I can't remember.
So we do still instruct world language at the elementary level beginning in 4th grade. So we do 4th and 5th grade, and we've moved to almost entirely Spanish. We have one magnet school that does.
And how much per week do they get?
They get an hour per week. They get 2 30-minute
Do you
sessions.
seriously believe, but no, only a person that's trying to maintain their job will support this. No one is going to learn a language if they don't use it at home for 1 hour a week. That's reality. It is reality.
I'm simply going to say this much. The research does show that language acquisition at the youngest grade levels is where you're going to have the greatest propensity to learn.
But not 1 hour a week. I mean, you know, I had a teacher who was in the program back then. She came to me and she said, "Why would you do this?" She says, "I just saved my job by refuting you." That was what it was all about. It wasn't about the kid learning the language. It was about the teachers keeping the job. She go around to the schools, and that's not a rumor. That actually happened.
Yeah.
Now, the other question I have is, we discovered back 4 or 5 years ago that we were taking in students from Hartford, which is fine. Hartford was getting paid for the state because they're on the state dole, basically. They were getting paid for those students. We weren't getting any money. Has that changed?
I don't think that was ever true. We take in students from Hartford.
No, we found that to be true.
Well, we get paid for every student that comes in from Hartford, and then if they have special education needs or additional requirements, we get reimbursed for that fully from Hartford. So that's a revenue source.
One of the people that was in the tax fair found us out. He was a dentist. He did research on the side, and they weren't getting paid at that point. And as I say, this was 5 or 6 years ago. But it's good that you've done it now.
No, I honestly can't imagine that being
I
true.
will wag my finger when you're wrong. I will turn around and say, like, good decision.
Yeah.
But we should get paid for that.
And we do.
And now I'll shut up.
No, you're fine.
One other thing, also, because of special education, it does seem like people are moving to this town for special education. My neighbor just did that, and he said, I don't get the services in Farmington. In Farmington? So, to me, there's nothing you can do about, I'm sure, but can we apply for more state, shouldn't we be applying for more state aid? We should be.
Yeah. So,
I mean, and I'm sure you already have thought about that, but I'm bringing
yeah,
that up. What?
Take them in as a transit, in other words, let them come in and pay.
So one of the things we're actually doing this year is we have an intensive behavioral program. So when folks say they're moving in because they can't necessarily get the service, in a smaller town, they might not have the same depth of programming. And so if they're going to get that service, they're going to be potentially placed out of district and move away from their home school. So they may decline that service and just not get the level of support their child needs and stay in their district, or they may move here. So we have an intensive behavioral program that works with students that are dysregulated. We are showing that there is a slight decrease in our number of students that we forecast that we need. So we are opening up slots to outside districts and charging them a tuition. And so that's one of the adjustments that's happening in this budget. And we see the potential for that in our post-secondary program. We have a requirement under the state for students with significant intellectual disabilities to be able to educate them through the school year in which they turn age 22. We have a very strong program. We have the Next Chapter bookstore in the center of town, and we do a lot with them. We house some of the program at Town Hall. We house the rest of the program offsite at the American School for the Deaf, and that's a program that we see as very attractive for other districts who can't necessarily provide that same level of service. We could do so cost neutral and charge tuition seats, not to the point where we'd have to hire additional staff, just to fill open seats without any decrease in service to our own students, and make revenue on that. The thing that's holding us up from doing that at the post-secondary right now is the space. We don't have the physical space. We are offsite at ASD, so we're looking at spaces to see, hey, can we find a cost-effective space we could move the program to, and then open up tuition seats for other school districts in an effort to, create that revenue stream and, basically maximize the service. Other districts are way open to it because that's, instead of them having to pay the out-of-district tuition, which is a skyrocketing cost, they can pay a reasonable tuition to another public school. It's very common. It's what a lot of school districts do. And the state has grants available that we're taking advantage of for, as I said earlier, special education expansion and development. And so we're taking advantage of that grant in order to be able to utilize state funding to help grow and basically deal with the expansion that we're seeing just from move-ins.
Good to know. But still, the bottom line, back to the budget, 6.5%, unacceptable, 2 years in a row. We have to do something. And I know it's going to be tough decisions, but I think we have to make them this year.
So, well, on that topic, so on the town side, we have $1 million as a solid waste contract increase. It will come down because we're going out to bid, but we spend $5 million on solid waste pickup. So one of the initiatives that we started working on a number of years ago was to reduce solid waste, right? To put meal waste, the heavy food waste, into compostable drop-off locations. We had talked about town-wide, front yard pickup, which is expensive. So we opted for these drop-off locations. We're doing well, but not good enough to kind of, definitely not to offset the increases. But there are options of having that be a paid service. So having the town not do it anymore, taking $5 million out of our budget and handing that over to individuals to then have potentially $300 fee that they would have to pay. But then you wouldn't have those increases year after year, potentially for solid waste, unless the contractor that's negotiated is. But it's something that we have to think about. We're going to be talking about it. And, people ask for an additional week of recycling. Well, that's going to cost us $500,000. So, we can't do that without dropping the cost somewhere else. I thought the question, I don't know your name, sir, Mr. 30-year-old, John, welcome to town. And I have a couple of sons that are, 29 and 32. 32-year-old does and a 37-year-old does, and it's hard. It's hard to afford a house. It's hard to put your kids in preschool. It's really tough. I have four generations. I have a 97-year-old mother, myself in my mid-60s, my two sons in their 30s, and then two grandchildren. And so I see the fixed income, I see the preschool, and and the new homes, and I feel it at every single stage. And that goes into every decision we make on the first responders. If our first responders compromise sometimes to get to by cutting staff? Do we have changed our response to an emergency event? We have a triage, better triage at a call. We have police as first responders, and we have a fly car for fire rather than a full truck. It's changed a lot, actually, from even 5 years ago, 4 years ago. So those things we continue to work on. Some of it is initial investment to ultimately get. We have changed minimum manning to allow for the EMT or the EMTs or paramedics. I'm like trying to have three people on a truck. We don't make up those minimum manning. Those are standards that come from the safety professionals. And we had a consultant that came in that was giving us some efficiencies, but actually told us to hire more firefighters. So we actually have had quite a few fires in town that have shown how important it is to have a fully staffed fire department. But again, if you personally haven't been touched by it. A lot of our residents have, so unfortunately. But I will say those decisions of, okay, what do we do about a solid waste cost that is going up close to $1 million? Do we change the way we deliver services? That's what happened with leaf collection. Leaf collection was going up. There was no contractors. The towns that do them hired inside. We were contracting out, and the contractors we would have had to increase our headcount by, 15, 20, I don't know, 10 people. It would have really increased our costs. So we made a decision to pass that on, that the town couldn't do everything, right? So as we said before. So those are things that we do think about. And if we talk about what would a zero look like. It would be closing libraries or closing senior centers. That would be probably where we would have to start before we got to public safety. One's mandated and contract driven. If public safety, and I don't know if any of you participate or listen to our public safety meetings, we have an active community. There's a lot going on. And our police chief every year asks for more officers, and he doesn't get them. but we do the best with what we have, and we have been able to keep our community very safe. But if we do go down to some level, that is going to slide. And we have had times where there's been a rash of either car burglaries or break-ins into homes, and we've been able to respond to those hot areas to really lean into bringing that public safety up to a better, really respond in a way that is more robust. We Public Works runs so lean, but we create a great product. We don't do as many miles of roads as I would like, but 10 miles of roads every year, no matter what, to our 220 miles. So it is so hard to squeeze everything and be the town that we are. If we do continue, I mean, we can't continue at this rate. And that's one of the reasons why we've been so focused on grand list growth. Bringing more residents into town, having that revenue pool grow. We've been able to recruit, and some is confidential, some corporate headquarters that want to be in West Hartford, and we're hoping that we can release some of that soon. People want to be here, and we want to maximize that where we can. So it will be a balance. I know you have another comment. It will be a balance, but we are not going to continue at this rate. We can't. But we're all going to have to. There's going to be sacrifices we're all going to have to make, and I hope you make them in an honest and really. A way that is really candid, and let us know if there are places where you do see waste. If you feel that there is something that isn't working, let us know about it, and we can look into it and respond as appropriate. But George, go ahead, Mr. Kennedy. Where's your?
You just made the argument. You just made the argument for a financial advisory committee and a general advisory committee to get other thinking in, to give you options. Because if you're dealing with a closed cell, we used to, in management consultants, say people in corporations were like cylinders. They didn't go this way. And I'm suggesting, basically, and been suggesting for years, and so has the committee, that a financial advisory committee would be helpful. It's not going to dilute your power. It might expand your power. And an independent advisory committee, it gives you other people with input.
Yeah.
Not necessarily me. That gentleman is locked. I nominate him.
Yeah, we know we can talk about it. By charter, we can't establish like a commission. We'd have to open our charter, which would take 2 years and a lot of work. But we can talk about if there's other.
Ask people to be ad hoc, and it would be helpful.
Yeah. Yes, I'm gonna go.
I'm sorry to change the topic. I certainly would like our property taxes to go down on the record. But I do appreciate all of the hard work represented by the folks here, the time that was spent on the Board of Ed, on the Board of Ed budget and the town budget. And West Hartford is a great place to live, and I love living here. I am one of those people that has 2 children who take advantage of the public schools, so I guess I am perhaps a bit different than a point of view that's been expressed, but I have more of a micro level question than a macro, if it's okay, just to sort of change the focus. You mentioned last year we had to make some cuts to the full-time staff teachers at the elementary school level. I think it was at 199. Then at some point when the numbers came in, you made a decision to increase to 6, and at your discretion, you made changes to the sections. Unfortunately, Charter Oak, where my daughter goes to school, didn't benefit from those decisions. And I guess from my perspective, I'm wondering when the numbers come in and you have your discretion to potentially hire more teachers, do you strictly look at the guidelines, which I understand are 27, or do you look as well at other criteria like the achievement gap at certain schools and the needs of the individual schools, and whether or not the students would benefit from a smaller class size based on the individual needs of those classes?
Understood, absolutely. So we do look at all of those things. I won't lie though that the class size guidelines are something when we do make the change, any change that we're going to make it. If I'm gonna, and what happened this past year, where we had some of our upper grades, all of a sudden we were hitting at a 27, which is the maximum that we'll usually do. If I'm going to make that change and I have multiple 27s, I'll generally, and I can feel and I can be looking at, okay, let me look at the density of students with IEPs or 504s or the number of multilingual learners, or I've had principals call me up and just say, I have a very difficult cohort. They don't necessarily flag on all these boxes, but let me tell you, and principals are outstanding at advocating for their schools. If I'm making a shift somewhere, my goal is to then, okay, can I make, is it going to be equitable? Am I going to be able to defend it? So the guidelines themselves do certainly come into play. Charter Oak and Smith as our two magnets, they do have lower class size guidelines. They're lower by 2. But I've heard from some of the Charter Oak community, specifically in the upper grades this coming year. I know the projections for Charter Oak are going to approach in 4th and 5th grade 25 per class. And I know that there's a concern that that's heavy. And while all the other schools, while that's within Charter Oak's guidelines and all the other schools are within their guidelines, the majority of the other schools, they have a higher guideline like 27. But if they have 62 kids projected in a grade level, I can't do 2 sections, I do 3, and now they have comfortable sections. So I can appreciate the concern and know about the achievement gap for Charter Oak, but Charter Oak also does have, one of the things that goes beyond that singular dimension of number of classroom sections are the other supports and components that they have relative to and how those things are funded through some of the magnet funds. But it is something I'm talking about with my team because Charter Oak's an area. It's I think Gina's doing an outstanding job. She's starting to make a real dent in some of that gap, and I want a mass resource. I want when we look at our literacy supports, whether it's literacy specialists or what have you, there's a certain number of those supports that are distributed across every school, but is there the same degree of need? Is there a higher density of need? And do we need to mass more resources and take away from other schools? So that's something we looked at. We redistributed our tutors last year. It's something that we do look at relative to, as I was explaining on instructional paraeducator support and magnet funds. But I don't know if you had a follow-up on that.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate the decisions that need to be made. I still wonder at the decision because you're talking about a projected number this year, but if it really is 25, which by the way is not documented anywhere that I could find online, I only could find the 27. We were at 24 and 23 this year in the 4th grade sections, and all the criteria that you listed out, I would think that our school is probably on the higher end of need than other schools that are at that same number. I think the other issue with the guidelines that it does address the upper limit, but it doesn't address the variance between schools. So it would be a little bit easier to swallow if you're looking at across all elementary schools and everyone's in a similar range, but you really do have class sizes that are as low as 17 in 4th grade at some other schools, and we're at 24, 23. And so I know it's a numbers game and it matters where people are living and all of that, but it is sort of it's difficult to understand why that criteria didn't carry the day last year, and it's also a question now, is it going to be the same waiting game where we're going to be waiting to know, fingers crossed, we get our teachers list next year to find out if the criteria carried the day this year?
Yeah, you guys were in the criteria last year. The criteria is actually listed on, it's in a board policy. I can't cite it.
Okay.
But it's class size guidelines, and it should identify, it's 27 is the typical class size guideline max for grades 4 and 5 across the district.
That's right.
2 fewer at Charter Oak and Smith. And it's
it doesn't,
20.
in the guidelines on the website, it doesn't stipulate for magnet schools. It doesn't matter. I mean,
Okay.
It didn't make a difference here, clearly. So.
Understood, yeah. But I mean, you're making the argument for, and it's an argument I appreciate and I don't disagree with,
Fair enough.
for lower class size guidelines in areas of higher need. And we do have Charter Oak's a Title I school. We do have 5 Title I schools, elementary schools in the district. They do receive additional supports through the Title I grant. And that money is used to fund different things. So there is, I don't know if you can just see it in one policy or in
Sure.
class size guidelines beyond that minor difference of 2 students, but there are additional funding supports to provide the additional resources at our schools with higher need.
Okay. Just one follow-up, and I promise I'll.
Sure.
Does it matter the amount of outreach and what you hear from parents at the school?
I will
mean-
tell you, it matters very much. We've had things in our budget that we've looked to cut, and things in our budget that we've looked to add, and we've had significant teacher voice come out and to talk about those things that have, during our budget workshops, that have very clearly, I think, driven some decisions. There are difficult decisions. Leadership matters, as was said, and sometimes it's a challenge. But I would tell you that voice does matter. I think, as the mayor made mention, we knew in the last 2 years we're coming out with hard news, and so we are seeking the discourse that we're receiving. We're welcoming, the very frank, candid commentary on concerns and ideas that come forward from this.
Yep.
Just
We're
because
going
you
to
said
wind up in about 10 minutes because this library closes. So we have to move on out. But thank you.
Just because you said number of people reaching out does matter, I also have kids at Charter Oak. So just to piggyback a little bit on some of Jake's comments, I know also that the smaller, the 25 number for magnet school I am familiar with, and the 27 for the regular. But piggybacking on the sentiments, I understand that those are the class recommendations, and so Charter Oak would have lower class size recommendations, but they still have, and I think are projected next year to actually have larger class sizes than many of the other schools, as Jake was saying, like 17 per class, and I don't remember the exact which schools they were, Morley or whatever. Whereas Charter Oak is still projecting to be right at that 25 head count. So, I know they do have the lower recommendation sizes, but they're right at those levels, whereas the other schools, and I know you don't want to cut teachers at any school, and every school deserves to have as small of class size as possible. And to your point with, they get the extra funding for different things, but balancing it with my understanding of Charter Oak having some of the lowest test scores in the district, and then just because it is something specifically on my radar, I know it's also the hub for deaf and hard of hearing students. So that's a population that's really exponentially negatively impacted by large class sizes. One of my kids is deaf, so I'm very familiar with the bigger the class, the less access he has to language, and also the less in tune his interpreter is with his needs. Because when you have a class with 24 kids and one teacher and his interpreter, in theory, the interpreter is only supposed to be interpreting, but the reality of being in a classroom with 24 7-year-olds is you're not going to be able to do that job efficiently. So, agree, I love all the services West Hartford has. I think you guys offer many amazing things to our students. I would just piggyback on the sentiment of concern kind of for the direction that class sizes is going, especially considering, new residents moving in and the potential continued growth for the student population.
No, absolutely. First off, thank you, and I know I have board members here intently listening, so thank you, because I think that's something I've gotten a couple of emails from Charter Oak. I wouldn't say I've had a groundswell, but this is good to be able to kind of hear it directly. It is the numbers. Blind adherence to the numbers is difficult because in a situation like what you're describing, if I have, say, just under or just near 100, a cohort of 100 that's at say Charter Oak, and it builds that 4 sections near their max, whereas if I had 105, all of a sudden we'd have 5 sections and we'd all be very happy because it would have exceeded those guidelines, and so it becomes one of those questions, and it's one of the difficult decisions. Do you, if last year when I was in this boat, we had published our elementary projections, and those are moment in time projections, and we did the strict adherence and said, here's what it would look like, but we had 3 elementary sections to give. We said we know that there are going to be some sections that break, and we have these 3 teachers that are as yet undetermined where they would go. And everybody came out and they all wanted to know, am I going to get the teacher? Am I going to get the teacher? We published updated projections, which was another moment in time, and all of a sudden, just based on a move in here, a move out there, the picture shifted somewhat dramatically. I don't know if that's going to happen at Charter Oak, because generally it can come down to 4 or 5 kids. What I don't have this year, as of this moment, is I don't have those elementary sections sitting in reserve. Right now, I'm projecting 202. I've got them all planned. But I have to, but we always react to whatever happens, wherever the population goes, if it increases or decreases. And I do hear what you're saying. Is there, at the end of the day, if it didn't move, is there an interpretation of those guidelines that assesses a greater amount of need to either divert a resource or add a resource? So I hear the question. I don't have an answer for you today, but I very much hear and understand and respect the question. And it's a good question because, as I was saying, just as with other resources, we want to put the resources where they're most needed and where they're most effective.
Okay, so we are really at a wind-up time, and I just want to first thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules and coming and talking to us and listening. And we do have really hard decisions to make ahead of us, and we have made some very strategic decisions to right the ship a bit. We'll continue to try to do what we can to bend the curve. But what you can do is talk to our state reps, talk to people in leadership to talk about the property tax impact on you. And I think it's really important to have some change on property taxes. And they're talking about a little bit more ECS money, maybe $1 million, $1.5 million. It doesn't help that much when you have a budget going up $14-15 million on the education side. So from a town perspective, we've been asking for other revenue, some other revenues, the revenues that were intended to go to municipalities. So when Massachusetts did Proposition 2.5, what they did was they said, okay, municipalities, their property taxes were going up pretty rapidly, and they said, okay, municipalities, if you want to go over 2.5, you're gonna have to go through some approvals. But they also said, we know that the costs are going up higher, so they started increasing their funding to municipalities for education and for some of the other costs, maybe construction costs. So our legislators need to hear the property taxes really do affect affordability. It does impact. You talk about the emphasis on housing affordability. Well, you know what? Then support municipalities in leveling off or maybe easing off of property tax reliance. So that's what I would ask you to do. Stay involved in the process. We hope you will, and thank you again so much for being here. And thank you to all of my colleagues that are here as well. Thank you.